Okay. Esteemed State Secretary, Mr. Kapferer, honored guests and participants of EuroDIG 2014. Welcome to the second day of EuroDIG. After yesterday, seems a little bit empty, the room. I guess either the football match last night or the reception was too long, or the weather is too good for shopping instead of sitting here. Who knows? Today again, and that's what I know from the program, we can expect a fascinating dialogue, including, amongst other things, panels on topics, youth protection, security, copyright, all those things which you can find in the press as well. And of course I hope you enjoyed the evening last night. We have, to give you rough numbers, yesterday around 450 people here in these rooms, and with the overall registrants of 700, that's quite good. That's the usual Berlin rate, where we have 50% no-show. So we're doing a little bit better than 50%. So that's why I'm pleased to see at least half the room filled meanwhile. And although it's Friday, and whenever I hear Friday conference, I remember a restaurant chain in Taipei called TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. But we start now with Friday, and I would now like to welcome Stefan Kapferer, State Secretary in the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, whom I would like to thank for the patronage. The Ministry of Economics and Energy, as you can see here, has the patronage for EuroDIG 2014 in Berlin. And now, Mr. Kapferer, you have the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rother, for welcoming us today here in the morning. Good morning, everybody. I also know that the Berlin nightlife is very exhausting. I had a meeting yesterday evening in the so-called Haus der Kulturen here in Berlin. It was a reception organized by the Brazilian embassy, and you can imagine what was the reason for that reception. And the problem with all these different time zones in the world is that there are games now very late in the evening. I've heard today in the morning that one game in Brazil will be, when you look at the European time, at midnight today, and that means next week in all these meetings we will see less people than today here in the EuroDIG forum. Mr. Rother said us that my minister, Minister Gabriel, is the patron of this year EuroDIG forum here in Berlin, and it's a pity that there is also an Energy Ministers' Council meeting in Luxembourg today, and that's the reason why I'm here to welcome you for this second day of the EuroDIG forum. But I'm sure that also on this second day we have a lot of issues to talk about, a lot of issues to discuss, because this digital revolution is a revolution for every part of our daily life. And that's the reason why talking about digitization, talking about internet governance, talking about the future of the internet is an issue not relevant only for maybe the Ministry of Economic Affairs and maybe not only relevant for all these governments in the world. It's an issue relevant for everybody in the world. And sometimes a few years ago we talked about an offline generation and an online generation, and we talked about a divided society. And maybe there's still a group of people, elderly people, like my parents, for example, between 70 and 80 years, they still believe that they are offline. But that's not real, because we all know if there is no computer in the home, if they do not use the internet as themselves, they are also in this online world. Everybody is in this online world. Internet, the future of the internet, is relevant for everybody in our society. And it's that reason why I'm happy that EuroDIG has established as a forum to discuss all these very important issues in our society. And I think it's a great pleasure for Germany, and it's a great honor that EuroDIG decided that ECHO is the host for this year's conference. And once again, welcome in Berlin. I know that the next panel will discuss the economic opportunities and the economic challenges when we look at the digital world. And when you look at Europe, and I know that many of you are from different European countries, it's very clear that looking for new sources of growth, new ideas for business, new opportunities for new jobs, creating jobs, fostering growth in the European Union is a very, very important issue. And you know that the German economy at the moment is very successful and very competitive. Our GDP growth rate this year will be near to 2%. The unemployment rate in Germany is very low. But there are other member states in the European Union where the situation is much worse. And it's very, very clear that it is also our interest to use every opportunity to create new jobs, to foster growth in these European member states where the situation is much worse at the moment. And I'm sure that talking about the digital revolution, talking about the digital agenda for our countries, is also an opportunity to talk about new opportunities for growth, for GDP growth, and for new jobs. When we look at Germany, you know that Germany is still a very important industrial global player. And you can imagine, and you know that Germany is not a cheap country. We have relatively high wages. We have a very expensive social security system. And that means what we need in Germany to be also competitive in the future is a very innovative society, a very innovative economy. And as a Secretary of State in the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy, it's normal to visit different fairs every year. I visited this year not only the CeBIT in Hanover, I visited the Hanover Fair of Industry, I visited a fair about intralogistics, I visited a few days ago a fair in Munich about robotic. And what is the common link between all these different fairs? It's a discussion about Industry 4.0. That means it's a discussion about the link between traditional manufacturing, traditional machinery, traditional industry on the one hand, and the digitization on the other hand. And to be competitive in the future, there is a demand, there is a need of linking digitization between the traditional manufacturing process in our economies. And that's the reason why I think investing in Industry 4.0 is one opportunity for the European economies to become more competitive and to be more successful in this worldwide competition about jobs and growth. German industry is investing a lot in this Industry 4.0, and I asked all these CEOs you met on these fairs when you visit the different companies on the fairs, I always ask them, who is organizing the software for your products? And 95% of them told me it's organized in our company itself. And I think that's very interesting, because it shows IT security, data protection is an issue, important when we look at the situation of success for the small and medium-sized companies in Germany and in Europe and in the world as a whole. And it's very clear that Siemens, Daimler, Volkswagen are able to organize IT securities for their companies by themselves. But the German Ministry of Economic Affairs is engaged in helping small and medium-sized companies in Germany by organizing IT security in these companies, by organizing all these innovations when we talk about the link between digitization and traditional manufacturing. And there's one more issue you discuss here on the second day, and also important for the economic success of this digitization process. It's the question of skilled workforce. In an aging society like Germany and many other European member states, and also Japan or the US, it's very clear that the number of skilled people in a younger age is shrinking. But at the same time, we need a lot of many motivated, innovative people. And that's the reason why we also have to invest in education. We have also to invest in research and development. And last example of this very important aspects for the economic perspective you will discuss in the next panel is the question of small and medium-sized companies. I'm sure you know that one reason why Germany is so successful worldwide when we look at the economic situation is that the German model is based on many, many thousand small and medium-sized companies. And when we talk about the ICT business, everybody knows that. We talk about many, many small and medium-sized companies. And a few days ago, Mr. Rother and I talked about it, and we both visited this reception. The factory opened here in Berlin. The factory is a new place to develop new businesses, a new place to be for small and medium-sized companies. And Mr. Schmidt from Google, also a sponsor of this meeting today, was there. And you can imagine that the interest of the mass media in Germany was also very high for this event. I think it was only an opening of a new business, but it shows that this startup community, which is necessary to organize a link between traditional industrial manufacturers on the one hand and the ICT business on the other hand, this small startup community is growing very fast, especially here in Berlin. Berlin is a hub for the startup community in the ICT world, because Berlin is exciting, Berlin is interesting for many, many people in the world. And I'm sure this is also one important issue for all the political decisions we have to make in Germany, but also in other European member states when we think about reindustrializing Europe, when we talk about reindustrializing in our economies. All these examples about the economic success and the economic perspectives shows that every government in the world needs a digital agenda, needs a plan for organizing this process of developing the society, developing the legal framework in their own country for the next few years. And that's the reason why the German coalition decided to develop a digital agenda. It will be finalized till summer this year. And it was very interesting to see that a few years ago, and I was also responsible for the ICT business in our ministry a few years ago when we talked about IT summits, when we talked about the framework for ICT business in Germany, when we talked about the tremendous challenges of this digital revolution. The Ministry of Justice was interested due to the issue of data protection and intellectual property rights. Maybe the Ministry of Interior was interested due to the situation of IT security. But for the most other ministries at this time, it was not really relevant. Now, all the colleagues from other ministries call me and say, we are also interested to have our own working group in this process of developing a digital agenda for the German government. The Ministry of Social and Labor, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is engaged in this process, and we have now a ministry not only of traffic, maybe you heard about that this ministry is also now responsible for the digital infrastructure. I think this is also a clear proof that situation has changed. In earlier times we had a Ministry of Traffic. Now we have a Ministry of Traffic and Digital Infrastructure. It's not only roads and not only other traditional ways of infrastructure. We need this digital infrastructure. And all these ministries are engaged in this process of developing a digital agenda. And there are a lot of issues for the economic aspect of the digital agenda, but there are also aspects of security, data protection, the expanding of the digital infrastructure for our country. And I think there are a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges. And it's very clear that, like we discuss it today here with you, and you discuss all these different perspectives for the internet in the future, also the German government has to discuss in this developing process of the digital agenda the situation of our societies, the situation of the German perspectives in the future of the internet with all the different stakeholders, with a different stakeholder approach in this process. And when we talk about the multi-stakeholder approach, I think it's also very important to talk about ICANN and the internet governance in the future. And one aspect of the future of the internet is that we have to be careful that this open, free access and international approach of the internet is not broken. Maybe you remember that after the NSA scandal a few months ago, we had a discussion in Europe and also in Germany. Would it be helpful to organize IT security in our country by organizing a German cloud, by organizing national routing or maybe European routing? And it's very, very clear that the German government is not convinced that this is the right answer. This would be a clear proof that the era of a free and open internet in the world will be finished if it's organized by national governments, by European governments in a European way. It's very, very clear that if there's a voluntary offer by a company to organize routing or clouds with a very safe standard only on the European level, it will be accepted. Fine. It's an offer and everybody can decide. But it's not a question that have to be organized by the government in these countries to organize it in a special and national way. Let me give you a few remarks about the future of ICANN and internet governance in the next few months, because I think these objectives of internet governance to guarantee the stable and smooth technical running of the internet is also very important in the next few years. And it's very clear that the German government is very engaged in this debate worldwide. We had this meeting, Mr. Rother was there in Sao Paulo, and also representatives of different German ministries have been there to discuss the situation of the internet governance in the future. And it's our interest to engage ourselves in this debate to develop also for the future common international understanding and common international standards to organize this process. And I think it will be more and more important with more and more players in this area. And that's the reason why also talking about the future of ICANN is very successful. ICANN has played a key role by the administration of the internet architecture, and I think it was a very successful multi-stakeholder approach in history. And the announcement of the US government that it would be prepared to relinquish the control it has had over ICANN for many, many years now is also welcomed by the German government. But also the experiences of the last months shows us that that is not only an alternative to give it from the US government to the civil society. I think all the experiences of the last 2 or 3 years, many people in our countries are concerned and maybe mistrust some developments we have seen in our internet world, in our digital revolution, and that's the reason why also the German government, like other governments, is interested to play a key role, an active role in all the discussions about the rearranging the control of ICANN for the future. And there are a lot of different interests, and I'm sure that also the governments have a say on issues that touch upon political aspects and, most importantly, matters of public interest. Deciding upon the exact point where the responsibility of governments should end and where the freedom of the private sector should start, that's the key question we have to answer. You know that. And we talked about one sponsor of this meeting and one sponsor of the so-called startup scene here in Berlin. And I'm sure most of you have noticed that we have a discussion in Germany about monopols by organizing some basic infrastructure in this digital revolution. And this is not only a question for the civil society, this is also a question for every government in the world, and it's also a question of the German government. And that's the reason why we have launched a national debate with many stakeholders about the future of the internet governance. A few remarks before I will close about net neutrality. And I think it's also your interest to know a little bit more about the situation in Germany. It's very clear that the German government is interested that also in the future we can keep the internet as we know it, as a free and open forum for everyone, where people can express their opinions and where innovation can thrive. But at the same time, we also want to leave scope for the development of new innovative services and new fields of businesses. And it's not easy to answer this challenge to link both interests of the German government. On the one hand, a free and open internet, and on the other hand, to develop new innovative businesses and to foster growth in our economies. No one in the world, I think, could honestly claim that he has the right answer, a definitive answer to this question at the moment. But one thing is clear, we have to prevent the formation of structures that monopolize the internet, and that's the reason why we in the German government, the three different things we need to focus on as we discuss network neutrality. First of all, and I think that's very clear, we need to enshrine the regulatory principle of network neutrality in law. You know, we have the discussion on the level of the European Commission about this issue. I just had a meeting with Nelly Gross a few weeks ago, And I think this process is very important also for the future. And we need, the second point, the experience of our network agencies. We have a lot of experience with network agencies when you look at the infrastructure for the electricity system, maybe also for gas and other traditional infrastructures, also telecommunication as a traditional business, also postal service, but maybe not enough experience when we talk about the ICT business as a whole, and that's the reason why strengthening the network agencies in our countries is so important to guarantee network neutrality. And the third aspect is to guarantee an open and transparent debate on the subject of digitization. And that's the reason why the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs started a debate with the civil society, all the stakeholders about network neutrality. There are a lot of different interests, and in a democracy it's relevant and necessary to organize this transparent process for everybody. I'm sure that in a few years, when the next EuroDIG forum will be once again in Germany, maybe not in Berlin, but also again in Germany, and I hope that this will happen, we all will see that this digital revolution is more and more a process for everybody in our society. Like I said at the beginning of this short speech, it's now an issue for everybody, but maybe not everybody knows that. I'm sure this will change. I'm sure that most of the generations in a few years will use the internet as they do it today, and they will also feel that this is relevant for their daily life, for health, for their life of work, for the economy as a whole. And I'm sure that there are tremendous opportunities, but also enormous challenges for governments, for the civil society, for everybody in our countries. And it's very clear that in a democratic process, it's our task as a government to organize a discussion with everybody in our society. What are the threats? What are the opportunities? What are the concerns of this digital revolution? And to look for solutions in this discussion. At the end, people decide, like always in a democracy, in elections, what are the right answers to develop our society as a society which will be very successful in this digital revolution. You cannot be successful without the digital revolution. That means you have to handle with these digital revolutions. And the first step to handle with the digital revolution is to talk about all these issues like you did it yesterday and you will do it today here in Berlin. Once again, welcome here in the German capital. Once again, good luck for these discussions and thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Kapfer. Digital society at stake, Europe and the future of the internet. It perfectly fitted what you have said, and I hope the attendees carry away a little bit of this, what the economic view was on what we're discussing here. Sometimes we have the society aspects, and this was these were the economic aspects, and I'm happy to get this view. And there were a couple of words you said. I immediately said, oh, that's one has to Twitter to see, to inform the German colleagues that there is a clear view on these issues from German government and not just trailing around. So this brings us to the next panel, to the next point. And I don't want to introduce this panel. I think Jimmy Schulz is the moderator of the next panel, and Jimmy, the floor is yours. Get your people on the stage.
So, dear Michael, thank you very much. I'd like to introduce you for the next panel, the plenary number 4, which is how ICT can foster growth and development in Europe. Just take a seat and I'm going to introduce you right now. Okay, so everyone's taking a seat, everyone has a seat, that's great. So good morning, and I'm proud to see so many people awake this morning after a long night of football. Let me introduce the participants to you. First of all, I'd like to start with the youngest participant, that's Chal. He's 19, still 19 years old, and founded his first internet company at the age of 12. Sold it after half a year, and 3 years later, he convinced an investor and entrepreneur to invest in another company, which he is a CEO today. So welcome. Next participant is Dirk Krzyżanowski, founder and CEO of .Berlin. .Berlin, one of GTLDs, and maybe you could talk a little bit more about that later. You're doing a breakout session also on that issue. Dr. Jan Kranke, Vice President of Deutsche Telekom and Head of Regulatory Strategy Economics Division. Alexander Riedel, Deputy Head of the Knowledge Base and Unit of the Commission, European Commission. Miriam Jupp, founder and CEO of Mashup Communications. And last, myself, Jimmy Schulz, CEO of Cyber Solutions, founder of Cyber Solutions, and former member of the German Parliament. I'd like to start, maybe we're going to talk about the role of small and medium-sized enterprises in the ICT sector in Europe and concerning the internet governance stuff. Where are we gonna start? I think maybe what is the role of small and medium-sized enterprises in Europe is quite different than it is in some other part of the world. Small and medium-sized enterprises are the backbone of our economy in Germany and in Europe, and they do have, as it seems, more problems to grow. Are there any barriers we have more than in, for example, the US? Maybe that's something the Commission could talk about. Are there any barriers that that the small and medium-sized enterprises have problems to grow faster, to interact in the global market?
Well, perhaps first of all, and good morning everybody, I should start with a little context, because actually we need first to define actually what we're talking about here. And the web and digital technology brings plenty of, say, new opportunities, first of all. And there are new business models. Small companies are very often disruptive innovators, so they play a very important role in disruptive innovation, not just marginally improving things and so on. So they're very important for the ecosystem. And there is a huge acceleration of the speed of doing things out there in the economy. So the speed of doing business is not the same as it was, say, 5 or 10 years ago. So there's a paradigm shift, and that has, of course, also an impact on the, say, regulatory framework, but also on the market itself. So companies need clear and simple rules. They need no blockages to do the business. They need access to resources. But if we look at the reality, actually the reality is very different. So there is a highly complex regulatory environment in Europe. There are, at least if you look at the 28 member states, there are 29 legal systems, because you have the 28 national systems plus the European system, plus the EFTA countries and so on. And there is also, in terms of new disruptive developments in general, a slow reaction of regulators. And so there's lots of evidence for that. So first of all, I'd like to acknowledge that there's a mismatch here somehow. And so that is a little bit the context. Now, if we look at the, and I was sitting in the plane this morning making a few notes here, look at the barriers and possible solutions. Of course, I could do like the standard speech, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different things here, and the Commission has done a report, and we do a study, and so on. But most of us, we know what these issues are. And I'd just like to mention a few examples here. I mean, for me, the biggest issue is that there's no real digital single market in Europe, that there are quite a few cross-border obstacles, whether they are in the area of contract law or taxation, labor law, compliance, or in the area of standardization. And here, if I can say what the Commission is doing or could do, the Commission should perhaps look at a new role instead of legislating to build a regulatory framework. We should also look at how can we remove some obstacles in existing legislation, including national and European legislation, and there are a number of proposals in the pipeline. A second area is, of course, access to resources, finance, skills, and so on. And the third one, which is more longer term, is the question of culture and education. Of course, that is really something that we need to change in Europe, not because we know that there's a problem today, but we acknowledge that the problem is going to grow as Europe is getting older, and in general, the, say, risk attitude of older people is, as we know, not really the one which we need to start more businesses in Europe. So that's perhaps just as some introductory remarks from my side.
Thank you very much. Miriam, you are an entrepreneur. Can you react on that? How do you see that? Are there any borders that will avoid other problems for small and medium-sized enterprises in Germany, in Europe, to get into the market faster?
I'm not just an entrepreneur, but I work for many, many startups. That's probably why I'm sitting here. I've been working for more than 100 startups in the digital industry so far. And as we can see just from yesterday's taxi strike in Berlin, Paris, and other cities, where the taxi drivers want to push away an innovative service like Uber that is currently conquering the users' smartphones and how they travel within cities, like peer-to-peer traveling or commuting in the city. And then there's a huge strike, and taxi drivers have apparently made their standing in preventing an innovative company from doing what the users want. And it's little struggles like this where I think it's a big, big step backwards for a modern society, and what we can make out of the things that have been developed, that have been introduced to the market, that people want. But there are so many obstacles on regulatory fields that are a big burden for many startups I have worked with so far. And also for other small and medium-sized companies that might not be as digitally, or haven't arrived yet quite in the digital area, I see a big problem in the literacy, just internet literacy, in terms of legal literacy, in terms of the language of the internet, coding, and also in terms of privacy and how you can, what you can do as a company to fulfill or to make it easier for people to understand what you actually do, and also to become more literate as a company to prepare for the future in terms of legal issues, in terms of technical issues.
Thank you. Now we heard the view of small, medium-sized enterprises. Maybe you could tell us a little bit from the big companies, from Deutsche Telekom. How's their view on that issue?
Yeah, thank you very much for organizing this panel to debate the issues. I totally agree to what both other colleagues just said. So it's not a question of big or small companies that some changes in the environment are more detrimental in Europe than compared to other regions of the world. It's definitely true, and as Mr. Kaffer in the beginning said, the industrial or digitalization of all industries, I think, is a key trend we have and we have to support. And this is definitely a pool for growth, for innovation in Europe, and for creation of new jobs. So this is definitely the right trend to go. What I would like to highlight is a bit more, so to say, the international dimension, where Europe stands compared to other regions of the world. So how we currently see is Europe compared to other regions of the world falling behind in ICT capabilities. And so the question really is, what is the reason behind it? Where are we, and what are the necessary steps to change? If we look at the big regions, of course there are differences, but if I make it simple in 3 regions, I take the American approach, where we have the Silicon Valley innovation pool, a huge cluster of innovation. But the key strategy coming out of is companies in the, I would say in the structure, the winner takes it all. So we have big companies closed in itself. So Apple is a good example. It's a closed system in itself. It's undoubtedly a brilliant service, but it's a closed shop, so to say, with all attached problems we may have. If we go in the other direction of the world, direction Asia or China, we see clearly state-geared companies or state-supported companies growing big, being able to compete. So what we all know is that in the digital environment, scale matters. So the environment is important to reach scale. And exactly this is, I would say, the detrimental effects in Europe on politics and regulatory environment we have, where it is difficult to reach the necessary scale for companies to compete on a global level. These missing scale, of course, is partially part of, I would say, European structure, or European culture in general. So we have more countries and not 1 or 2 big countries. We have different languages, we have different cultures, so all these issues are inherently different in Europe. But nevertheless, I think we have a good chance to gain scale. I just want to highlight or propose for debate 4 key issues, what I think politics can do in Europe and in Germany to strengthen the European digitalization, not only the ICT sector in itself, but of course the resulting digitization of other industries. So first of all, we need an environment which is helpful for technical entrepreneurship, supporting small startups. We have already a couple of years started in Berlin our Hubraum. Now Google a couple of days started the factory, so the ideas are coming up. We are supporting these kind of startups. What is still a key problem in this area is financing, not so much the seed financing, but the following financing, as far as I understood it. This is clearly an issue which doesn't function very well in Germany and Europe. The second point, which may not be a surprise to you that I raise it here, is the key point that all our digitization will not function without having the underlying infrastructure. So the key issue where Europe lags behind is infrastructure, is investment, may it be mobile, may it be fixed, may it be the necessary access speeds and so on. So why is this so? We can go in a lot of detailed discussions. But for sure, the regulatory environment in Europe is not really helpful if the sole goal is achieving lower prices, which is definitely beneficial for customers in the short term, but which leads to the situation we currently have, that investment is lower than it should be. The third proposal I would like to make is to focus on clustering. Because what we see in Europe is quite a dispersed environment where we do not support enough the clustering or putting together knowledge in different pools to increase exchange. So especially if you talk about Industry 4.0 issues, where do we have a cluster for whatever, e-health, for e-automotive, and all these issues coming up? Politics may support in enhancing clustering in areas so that the entrepreneurs in these fields can exchange and increase innovation, or especially innovation speed. And the last point I would like to raise, and was already raised from the first panelist, is the question of interoperability and standardization. As I said, the American model is more based on a closed system. I think the European strength, and we really can use it in the future, is openness. Europe is open much more open and interconnected in these fields. But what we do need for it is to define the borders, to define the standards for interoperability, and really to increase a setting for open standards, for open European platforms, maybe for all these Industry 4.0 issues, would be extremely helpful and would definitely serve the European culture and history, and additionally helping the European industry to gain speed and scale on the global level.
Thank you very much. You've been addressing politics, and I think politicians will hear what you say. At least one member of German Parliament is in the room. Good morning, Thomas. Thank you very much for coming. I think it's great that politicians come here and listen to what we are saying here. But we've been talking about, and he just mentioned about the chances and the opportunities young entrepreneurs have. And you've been founding a couple of companies, being very young, and took the chance and just did it, which is very great. But where do you see the barriers that in Europe and I think you've seen that too. It's harder than in some other places on Earth to get started a global company. What are your well, you did it, but what's the difference?
So, well, first of all, thanks for the invite and good morning, everyone, and thanks for RIPE NCC and the NLIGF for sponsoring me to be here. Well, I like to be very positive, so I mean, let's not make the issues bigger than they are, because in the end, of course, it's possible if you have an idea and you want to do it, to just do it. But I think the most important issue I see is what you already mentioned, culture and education. So when I first came up with like a serious business idea, I was like 15 years old, which was actually the idea of my current company, which is a grocery delivery service by bike. So we deliver organic groceries to homes and offices in Amsterdam. And actually the first thing all my friends and their parents said to me was, well, you know, I don't know if you should do it, but if you do it, please be careful. Please try to, you know, use as little capital as possible. And then if it works out, you can try to do it bigger and bigger and bigger. But first, try to do it as small as possible. Be careful. And, you know, don't put too much money in. Don't put too much time in. Make sure you go to school as well still. So, everyone started telling me basically not to do it. Well, so I just did it anyway, and it's been probably the best experience that I had. Although I have to admit, actually, I kept going to school, but it took me 8 years instead of 6. Actually, yesterday when I was at one of the workshops, meanwhile I got the message that I passed my high school exam. So finally,
Congrats.
Thanks. Yeah. Finally done with high school, and it took me a little longer, but it was definitely worth it. And I think that it's the combination of the culture that everyone wants to avoid risks, and nobody's telling you, you know, just try it, just go for it. And I think the reason of that may be that we've all been so spoiled. I mean, we're all very rich here. We've got a lot to lose. So if I just go to school and then go to university afterwards, I will probably have a nice job and I'll make a lot of money, and I don't really have to worry that much. Of course, the last few years maybe it's a bit different, but still, chances are you'll be doing good. So I've got a lot to lose, and that's the reason why I don't want, or at least many people don't want to take too many risks to see if there's not even more to gain maybe. So about education, yeah, at school there's no attention at all for entrepreneurs. When I had to choose after 3 years of school which direction I wanted to do, the school made me meet a lawyer and a doctor and an architect and everyone, but not a single entrepreneur. And when when I had my business idea for the first time and I told it to my classmates, one of the girls said like, Tel, I really don't think that you should start a business. I think it's nothing for you. And I asked why, and she said, well, I just can't imagine you wearing a suit. And well, here I am wearing a suit, but that's a very rare situation. But of course, wearing a suit has nothing to do with entrepreneurship. But the only thing she knew about entrepreneurs is that they would probably wear a suit. So, well, that really makes me sad. If you're at the highest level of education in the Netherlands, you're 15 years old, and the only thing you know about entrepreneurship is probably an entrepreneur wears a suit, then I think that's a first problem. And then, of course, regulations and stuff is also important, but I think just making people aware of what entrepreneurship is and what's good and what's, you know, what's nice about it, that's the first step, I guess.
Thank you very much, because that's one of the topics I hope you will come to, is that the image of an entrepreneur is, well, oh God, we only want to earn money fast and exploiting their employees. No, we have to maybe all set up a mindset that, hey, no risk, no fun, just do it. And that's what you did. I really like that, your story. Maybe it's the first time in the history of mankind that you could start a company out of your own room, of your student room, with the investment of 500 euros of a computer and a fast internet access, and be a global player within 2 or 3 years.
Well, just so you know, when I was 12 and I founded my first company, I didn't have 500 euros at all. It was like way too much. I had my parents' computer, so the investment can even be zero.
And that's a big chance for everyone. And maybe we should tell everyone, hey, get out. The internet is not just the dark place. It's something where it's a chance for everyone for us. Dirk, you're an entrepreneur too, and of course we're an economic plenary here, so a lot of CEOs are sitting here. Well, where do you see? You've been doing your business, .Berlin, for quite a while, and fighting for that generic top-level domain. I think almost 10 years. I think.
Yeah.
And where do you see? Well, it took you 10 years to come where you are right now. Is that something different we have in Europe than in other areas, or is that?
Yeah, I thought when entering this panel, I asked myself if such a discussion we have today would happen in the Silicon Valley. And I thought, no, that will not happen in Silicon Valley. The entrepreneurship just happens. The startups just happen. They don't need to discuss or have any panels or discuss with politics or something like this. They just do because they want to do, and the people have the can-do attitude, and that's different. And I think I echo some of my colleagues here on the panel that we in Europe don't have that can-do attitude. We are more careful to do things, and it's harder to persuade investors, even private investors. I don't talk about VCs at this stage to spend good money like in the US on startups or even in the UK. And in preparation of the panel, I have asked some of my colleagues and other entrepreneurs, what is different here in Europe? Some of them were coming from the States here to Europe or other countries, and they said everything in Germany does take double the time at least, and that's Germany, not let's say other countries like Italy with really high bureaucracy and so on. Double the time you need in the US. That starts from the foundation of the company, hiring people or firing people, having the lawyers engaged in all these business processes take so long time here in Europe. That's quite interesting. In our case, we had another thing I want to add as an obstacle in Europe, and when it comes to Europe, I really ask myself, what is Europe? We have that Europe that has the Schengen tax and the Schengen
Abkommen, yeah, the Schengen thing where you can just travel, but entering the UK or Denmark or Norway or whatever, everything is not the the EU at the border. So, and if it comes to tax, and that was what the problem we had with our company, we wanted to move for an investor to another European country with our company, and the tax authority said, okay, what is your revenue you are projecting for the next 3 years? And if you want to move to another country, let's say the Netherlands or something like this, not a tax haven like the Cayman Islands or whatever, just the other European country, they said, okay, you have to pay us 3 times the money you earn in 1 year. And then we let you found another company in another country if you go with your people and some IP rights and what you already have here. And that's a big obstacle here in Europe if you want to move with your company, transfer money, people, know-how and everything like this. That should have been fixed, and I think in the European Union there are some legislation which is on the way, but still not there to have this free movement like in the US, where you can move from California to New York and with your people, with your money, with everything like this. I think these were some learnings and key issues we had here. And another one was, that was quite interesting, I think the governmental people left already here, most of them, but at the beginning, I think the worst mistake we made was with our top-level domain project. So we have invented to create a own namespace for the city of Berlin, which is .Berlin, a new ending on the internet. And the first thing we thought is, okay, that's a good idea. And the most beneficial would be the city of Berlin. In this case, we were going to the government 10 years ago and ask them if they want to participate, if they make everything for them for free. It's like creating a new Central Park in Berlin, let's say, where a startup spends all the money and says, we are running this for 10 years, cost-free, and it will be great for the whole city and the people. And the first thing we got from the government was an injunction at this time. So that was a hard experience. Maybe it's a special case here, but it a little bit shows that even governments are not really open to ideas. And if you ask them, I would never do this. I would just, in the next case, I just would do my business, ask not anybody in the government, even if it's something which is legally at the edge, and we have a lot of things which are legally at the edge. You see the Uber discussion with the taxi things here, but that's quite interesting. So just do your things if you want to found a company and don't ask too many other people on that.
Just do it. I see we have a remark from one of our key participants. We have some key participants hidden in the audience. So Oliver, please. Yeah, take the mic. Oliver Grün. Does it work? It works.
It works? Okay. So, thank you very much, Jimmy. Yes, my name is Oliver Grün. I'm from the Bundesverband IT Mittelstand. This is the German Federation of mid-sized IT companies, so IT SMEs. I'm also representative of PIN SME. This is a European one organization, but I'm not only any kind of representative, I'm also entrepreneur. So regarding to the colleagues on the panel, I want to mention I'm very happy that we are talking about IT SMEs and not only about the one end, which are the startups, which are very important, and the other end, the combines are also very important. But I think in the middle we have a lack. In the middle we have the IT SMEs, which are responsible in Europe for the majority of the IT jobs. I think we all know this, but so they have to play a key role with their innovations for the growth, for the economic growth in Europe, because I think we are all agree that we have a cross-sectoral issue with the IT, with the internet, and I think you have mentioned before some of the colleagues from the government are leaving now, so I often have the problem that they do not understand the importance of the digital economy. So I think it is very important to see what we have in a SWOT analysis, and we have the IT SME companies which will grow. So it is easy to make a startup, and we are helping startups. But if you want to grow, you need capital, and this is a big problem here in Europe. We must make a kind of smart money culture, so combine capital, know-how and network, because capital is here, but we don't combine it, and so we must solve this problem, because I think we have a funding shortfall for growth capital, not for funding capital, for founding capital, but for growth capital. We have a shortfall. If you see, I've also been in the Silicon Valley last year, of course, in the famous trip. If you see that there is per head 10 times more venture capital, this is one thing. But the second thing is, if you want to grow in the USA, we've heard before, you have one big market with only dollar, with only English, with one culture. And if you want to grow in Europe, you have 28 countries, cultures, tax systems, and so on. And so you need 10 times more capital, but they have 10 times more capital. So we have nearly no chance for big growth. And we have no consolidation instruments or companies here in Germany. So all IT SME companies, like my company, we have about 100 employees. And any time then there come the American or other colleagues and say, okay, no problem, I will buy your company. We don't have any consolidation instruments. So I think it's very important to get a new stock exchange 2.0 or something like this. We must think about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oliver. And I agree that we have, of course, a different situation than in the US because we are much more countries, more languages, more different cultures in Europe. And the different culture is not only that we have a different culture in how to in entrepreneurship. We have a different culture in surveillance. And of course, there couldn't be any panel at the EuroDIG without mentioning Edward Snowden. So maybe we should talk about that a little bit, that how is the Snowden surveillance affecting small, medium-sized companies in Europe? Are they afraid of what's happening? Are they, completely disappointed? They are lost trust, not into the internet. I don't think the internet is broken. It's not. But the people and the companies lost trust into the states, and that's the big problem. So how are small, medium-sized companies are reacting on what Snowden told us? Miriam, maybe you are advising small, medium-sized startups and companies. What do they tell you?
Well, first of all, it's a good thing that Snowden is there. So there is a huge
and still alive.
awareness, and it's still a long way to go. But I think the awareness is a very important step. I personally can only speculate about how it will affect companies on all sorts of levels. But what I see from the innovating companies that I work with is that it's also a huge chance, because topics like encryption services or putting your service in Europe, or nobody knows if that really helps, but it seems like a better option or safer option, are also increasingly demanded. So small and medium-sized companies in all kinds of industries want to protect their data, their users' data, their business secrets. So they're turning more and more, they're not taking for granted that you just open up a Google Mail account and work from there, but they think actively about how they can protect their information, their data, and what they can do also to protect their users' information. And I think that's something we just have to observe if it actually works, because we don't know where the NSA is going and what they can read and see. And as I said previously, I think what companies can also do when it comes to terms and agreements, the thing we all sign when we log into a new service, that is very, very intransparent to the users, to also strive for simplification on all kinds of levels, to make it more transparent by using a language that the user actually understands when they click that I agree to these terms I've never read actually. So yeah, those are the two things, you know, awareness for how I can protect my information. And there are a lot of tools out there that enable easier encryption and protection of your data and servers you can use in Germany, Europe, Switzerland, whatever. And yeah, also the trend for, or yeah, what I could urge companies to do is to protect their users' information and to make it easier for them to protect them.
Just one more question, but because my impression was that some of small, medium-sized enterprises are so frustrated, I can't protect myself, it's so complicated, I can't do it, I give it up. Well, I have nothing to hide, so I ignore all the surveillance. Is that something you see, or is that, do you see, okay, is there a movement, I'd like to protect myself, I want to do that, is that, how can I do it?
Yeah, I think there are two sides and two different attitudes. But I believe that more and more companies want to protect their data, they just simply don't know how to. And that's where people or companies like the Deutsche Telekom can help, probably. Yeah, and at least what I said previously, the awareness is there, and you're also kind of depending on your service providers, on your host, on your email provider, to introduce features and security services, even though you don't know how to do it yourself.
Yeah, well, of course we're coming to Deutsche Telekom right now, but obviously you want to tell us which services you are offering to help small and medium-sized enterprises. I know that, but that's only one part of my question. The other part would be, how are you protecting yourself?
Okay, that's definitely both interesting issues I would like to answer, and I totally agree to what you've said. We have a higher awareness of security, we have a higher demand for security products in the various different fields, maybe software, maybe in the network. And of course it's a business for us as a company, but for others as well, so the demand for any kind of security services has definitely increased. Furthermore, what we as a company offer, others do the same, is a question really to give certainty to data storage. If we say a German cloud, that we store the data in Germany and not outside Germany. So this is what the market demands, at least some companies. I know that all these measures will never be 100% certainty if the NSA is sitting in Frankfurt or whatsoever, I don't know. But at least it increases security in this level. The other point you raised, what are we doing ourselves? We're very active and have an own department which is just controlling all our networks online every time to ensure that we avoid any kind of illegal interceptions. What we do, for example, is our well-known honeypots. So what we developed is special honeypots we put in our networks where every attacks, or to really, so to say, attract attacks on our network, and in real time to analyze and to define defensive measures, and therefore have an early control of upcoming measures. And we have hundreds of thousands attacks on these honeypots every day. So this is a very good analysis, and we are sharing this analysis with other companies and Therefore, we can increase, at least it's our ambition, to increase in real-time security based on the new attacks arising. And we have an own cybersecurity center who's monitoring this, and so this is definitely an issue where we increase the security. The other thing what we did is the email, so that we use encryption for part of the email delivery as well. It's increasing security. It will never be 100%, but it's at least helpful to set the hurdle higher for any kind of attack you may see.
Do you believe that the NSA, the GHCQ, and others are reading your email?
Well, I'm personally not using a Google Mail. I'm German mails, and I'm pretty confident that they are secure enough. But what the intelligence services of all countries worldwide do, I think nobody of us can have 100% certainty what they are doing.
Do you encrypt your mail?
I personally, for my private mails, don't do it.
May I make a little comment? I think something that we really have to thank Snowden for, because of course he showed us what the NSA is doing with our data, but especially for the smaller companies, the NSA is quite a big enemy to fight. So that I think that the solution for that may be more a political one, but I do think that a lot of our small companies, because of this, they have realized, like, okay, our data is being, people are trying to hack us, people are trying to reach our data, maybe they already are and we don't see it. So I think that the fact that Snowden showed us what the US government and other governments are doing with our privacy, maybe it made us realize, like, okay, we cannot fight them because we're too small to do that, but we can at least make it harder for other companies and smaller enemies to protect our data.
You're right. I have another key participant. Thomas, the mic is yours.
Just running and saving a little bit of time. Thomas Schauf is my name. I'm representing the German Association for the Digital Economy, so also representing SMEs, and they are doing data-driven businesses in the field of digital marketing, etc. And I'd like to also to address a different, or a second spin on this surveillance debate. Also in the discussions yesterday, and also if we talk about the NSA and GCHQ practices on surveillance, then people also say, oh my goodness, companies of digital business also combating with them together and also supporting their things, and we have to do something against this being a spy practices also of the companies. And I'd like to make a comment on that. Public opinion, and maybe we should also address this, that to lump companies of the digital economy together with surveillance is, in my personal view, wrong, and also some sort of negligent. As it then also comes to a point that also politicians and also civil society then say, okay, then we must do something on a regulatory base against those practices and maybe also against those business models. And then, for example, if you try to create a level playing field regarding data protection in the European Union, and then say, okay, then we have to implement something like users control. This means consent, and users must then tick boxes and so on. And this leads to a situation that, for example, also the third-party industry, and mainly the digital economy companies and SMEs are such third parties, were cut off of the entire value chain, and so they're not able to do any business anymore. And this means for Europe that most of 5,500 companies are affected on a negative basis. For Germany, this means that, roughly spoken, 460,000 employees might have a problem because their business is under fire. Maybe this could also be an aspect you could discuss about. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. I've got another key participant, Nadine, and then it's yours.
Hi everyone, this is Nadine from EUP, International Youth Service. I wonder, on the Twitter wall is a question to all of every one of you, like what's the panel view on competing with privacy? Is it a European chance? So this picking up from the Twitter wall. But also maybe I can add one question to Mr. Riedel from the European Commission, that you said we need more young people taking up the chance of having their own business, like Tile Klex did, for example. So I wonder if you can give young people here in the room a concrete example where they can link up in the next 6 months, for example. One concrete idea from DG Connect where they're offering something for young people to get involved and where they can link to. That's it. Thank you.
So maybe you just can reply immediately. Okay, you need 2 minutes. We have more from the audience.
Good. I've got a question for our young panelists. Hey, Till.
They're all young.
Okay. Sorry. Sorry. Anyway, so if I understand your messages, is that you want to engage young people in entrepreneurship. So, and that's a very good thing, of course. Even in Georgia, we have all this startup bloom and young people are starting up their own businesses. But if you look closer and what they do, what are their businesses? It's like they're offering services for windows cleaning or painting on t-shirts or for example, fixing your computers and stuff. So my question is it, and for something bigger, they of course need a bigger investment. So you were talking about you can start up your business with 0 investment, right? So that's a little bit doubtful. So if you want to do something big, of course you need much more money. So is it worth like dropping out of school for just doing business like offering service for windows cleaning or something like that? Or maybe, so even you had problems with school, right? And maybe education first and then businesses, like, what about that? I mean, I of course have nothing against you having your business and sitting in a very cool suite there, but still.
So yeah, well, I think it's so it's basically 2 questions, like how serious are the young entrepreneurs and should you still prioritize school maybe over or next to entrepreneurship? And it's a really good question. I think that many of the young entrepreneurs are indeed doing very small businesses and not always putting in all their time and all their money. But I think that's actually a very good thing, because it's also, you gotta see it as a learning curve. So my first company, I started it with €0. I sold it for €500, so really nice. I could buy an iPod and I was really happy with that. I was the first one in my class to have the iPod video. So really happy. The second company I started with about €5,000 from an investor and a little bit from my savings. And that's the company I'm doing now. And at this point only, I still see it as a very small business. And now that I've finished my school, is really my moment to say, like, okay, now it's time to look for a bigger investment of about €200,000 and really take it to the next level. But I could not have done that without the experience of my first 2 companies, because I needed to learn a little bit about taxes and keeping your books up to date, but also about sales and lots of other things about, trying to build a team. So I actually think that you're much more successful in the future if you learn very young about how to start a business. And of course, it's very known, and that's the reason why we go to school when we're young and not when we're old, that the younger you are, the easier it is to learn new things. And I think the same counts for entrepreneurship and for all the skills that you need to be an entrepreneur, which is a very wide range of skills. So I think it's great to practice that when you're young, so you'll become a better entrepreneur when you're old. And with old I mean like 25 or 30, of course. And so the second thing about education, that's really a hot topic, because I always have discussion about this, because people say, like, well, okay, you live on your own and you can pay your bills and you can pay your rent, so why would you want to go to university? And I really want to go to university. That's the reason why I kept going to high school for the last 8 years, while not always with a lot of joy. But I really think that, I want to try to get the best of both worlds. So I'm learning a lot from the real world, but at the same time I also want to learn from books and learn about, you know, what other people did and how they did it. Because in the end, I managed to start my own company, but if I look back and if I now start reading some books about the theory behind starting companies, I do realize that I've been reinventing the wheel basically a lot of times, because I never heard of you know, certain models about sales or how to calculate whether it's profitable to run a certain business or not. And now that I'm starting to learn a little more, I think like, okay, well maybe it would have made me avoid a few mistakes if I learned this before. So I think education is very important, but yeah, you shouldn't be afraid to delay your high school or your university a few years to also get some real world practice.
Thank you very much. I'd like to add, and then it's yours. In fact, I founded my first company to afford my studies because no one else paid for it. And it became so successful that I delayed my studies, and I studied 9 years, but I finished it. Because, well, I studied political science, and my father always said, if you do that, go be a cab driver.
And
I didn't do that.
I just wanted to add, because this question also opens up another topic. If you take a step back and look at the role of education and the role of schools, we always, like your question indicates, it's school or real life. It's entrepreneurship or school, that decision you have to make.
It's
and there's something completely wrong, and we're falling behind very fast when we continue like this already in schools. Why don't we integrate and embrace entrepreneurship? As Tail has said, there's so much you can learn by founding your own company in all kinds of fields, legal stuff, finances. All of a sudden math makes sense, and how you present stuff, how you sell, and so many things, how you lead people, and many, many more things. So I think there's something very wrong with our education system on the entrepreneurial level, and also on other levels I've mentioned before, educating children how to protect themselves using the internet, how to code, so many things that are not dealt with until we become 18 and leave school, or if you don't do it in our free time, which most people do anyway. So that leaves up a big question about what the education system is doing to promote entrepreneurship and to prepare us for a digital lifestyle.
I think that's one of those questions. Is that something in our educational system and in society that we don't tell young people that there is an opportunity to be an entrepreneur, that they learn how to do it? Dirk, I want to ask you, you're an entrepreneur, how do you feel about that? Is there anything in our educational system we should change, that young people should go out and say, hey, that's one of the options I have in life, be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think that we need special lectures on entrepreneurship in schools. It's not for all people. Most people are not such self-motivated, such intrinsic motivated to found a company and have all the positive and negative things with them. They like to be, let's say, stay at home, work as a taxi driver or whatever, do a job as architect or engineer or something like this. They are no entrepreneurs. When we are looking for new people in our company, which we're doing right now, we as founders always think the people need to be like us. But a lot of people we are hiring, they are not like us. They are normal people which work in administration or marketing or something like this, and they don't have this founder's gene or something like this, what you could say. So, but teaching in school that being an entrepreneur or owner or founder of a company, entrepreneur is always such connected with IT companies. I find this really terrible, because we have the green economy, we have the energy sector, and we have the food sector, where a lot of things are developing, and that are all also entrepreneurs which doing great jobs, and no one talks about them. They are just doing their things. That's quite interesting. So teaching at school that this is an alternative path you could go in your life, which is not straight always, with ups and downs, and you may go bankrupt with your idea, but there's a new start for people here, and that brings to us to a cultural thing in Germany and in Europe. We don't have at the moment this culture of failing with your company and standing up and found a new company. Sometimes people which go bankrupt, I think in Germany they need to pay for 7 years and can't start a new business or something like this. That's really hard. If you go bankrupt here in Germany, you're nearly out of the business for quite a time, and you have a stamp on your head which says he was bankrupt.
Failed.
Yeah, failed, or something like this.
Thank you very much for mentioning that, because I think, of course, there's a lack of a culture of failure, not only in Germany, but also in Europe, but it's extremely hard in Germany. If you failed once, you'll never can do it again, and that's completely different in, for example, the US. If you get up again, they say, well, this guy has experience. But we have another question from the audience, please.
We see a lot of really interesting disruptive American companies in the EU, like Uber, Airbnb, Netflix, Facebook, and they're disrupting our societies, and it's interesting. But they are also giving away products for free or very cheap, because they can use data in another way than most European companies can. Do you believe in competing with privacy, and is that a European chance?
Maybe you could react on that. It's your turn anyway, reacting on the last question.
Yeah, I was a bit confused about, you know, the young people. For which young people should I say something now? Below or over 25, or people like us here? No, actually, just, you know, that, I mean, Europe is doing a lot, but Europe, of course, should not do things where Europe is not the best place to do certain things. And that covers, of course, also, you know, activities for young people. We are running quite a few programs, and those who are interested in finding out about these can send me an email or can contact me after the plenary here. I'm happy to give you some information about, for example, the Erasmus Plus program, which has also a component here in Germany, a national component. We have plenty of opportunities for young people. It's a multi-billion program. Then there's also a program called Erasmus for Entrepreneurs, which has not been that successful in Germany. I hear because partly the German entrepreneurs are too busy, or that the English is not good enough when I look at the statistics. But also the Commission, we're trying to a little bit shake up the educational systems in member states to the extent that we can do that, because it's a responsibility of the member states' education. But we say, like, well, actually there should be, for example, more digital skills. There should be more awareness raising for entrepreneurship, although perhaps it's not for everybody, but at least raising awareness that entrepreneurship is an opportunity for people, and for also really skills that make young people future-proof, like, you know, we've talked about coding, but coding is perhaps just one example of digital skills altogether. There's, for example, now in October, the EU Code Week. I hope that all of you will engage and will do your own event in your place or in your school or in your university and so on. We have some multi-stakeholder platforms, such as the Grand Coalition for Digital Jobs, where there are internship opportunities, there are training opportunities and so on. But I have two sons which are relatively young, so probably not the target group in this room here. They're 10 and 14 years old. I would tell them also, don't wait for Europe. Do things yourself, because actually Europe is not basically something which is taking place in offices in Brussels. Europe is all of us. And we all have to take responsibility, and we have to do something. And particularly the tools that you have today via the web give us lots of opportunities of doing things even outside any formal channels and so on. And I think we have to take this collective responsibility also as a young person to basically reboot Europe.
Mr. Kranke, you mentioned you'd like to add something here.
Just on the last question from the floor, I think raised some interesting issues. It's regarding competition on data protection, and the question on how to compete vis-à-vis other players which offer their service for free on a monetary basis, but definitely not for free on a data usage basis, so to say. So you pay with your personal data, you don't pay cash. And of course, this raises, I would like to comment on two issues arising from it. So the one is that on these kind of competition, there is something in an imbalance. If you compete, for example, for us as a network player, but that's not company specific, but general, every network player in Europe, and you have good services like Skype, WhatsApp, and so ever, they are of course cannibalizing our core business. That's fair enough, that's competition, so nothing to complain. The question only arising from it is, in the political regulatory environment, do we treat these services in the same way or not? And if we there look in the details, of course, for our voice services, we have to fulfill a lot of legal obligations. Other services, like Skype, for example, don't have to do. So not to be misunderstood, I'm not demanding to raise the level of regulation for these OTT services, but it's a question of level playing field, and that's a core political decision to decide which kind of level security or legal obligations I have for a specific service, but this then have to be valid for every service in the same way. The question regarding data analytics, it's always tricky with regard to data security, and we had the discussion yesterday in a breakout session where I assume some of you were present as well. It's always a balance in between. On the one hand, data analytics is definitely necessary, also in Germany, and shouldn't be treated as a negative per se, because data analytics is extremely helpful. But it has to be transparent for the customers which kind of data you're using. And I think this is a difference in the American compared to the European approach. In the American way, you just simply have to accept every terms and conditions and implicitly allow any kind of data analytics. The European legal environment is more going in the direction that you have to make it transparent to the customer for, so to say, implicit opt-in or opt-out for using the data. Again, it's a question of level playing field between these companies. That's, of course, relevant for the European players to be able to compete. A last point on the issue, compete on data protection. Yes and no. This is tricky again, because on the one hand, you should serve and offer the services for increased data protection, and that's what we do as a company. If any company, doesn't matter which company, would say, I'm offering the highest data standard, you can be sure they are the first one for the next attack of hackers. So it's always a bit in the ambivalence on how you stress it to say, we realize, I think all of us, after the Snowden informations we received, that you can never be 100% sure that nothing happens. So this is possibly the realistic environment in the digital arena.
Thank you very much. Now we have queuing up audience at the microphones. You're first.
It's me again, but now I got a question for our female panelists. So what I've observed is that in the sphere of entrepreneurship and there are fewer females than males. And I think that's the fact, right? Correct me if I'm mistaken. So I remember me and Thiel were discussing something 8 months ago in Algeria. He was telling me about an idea of how he wants to expand his business or something like this. And then that seemed for me too risky, and I told him, oh, whoa, like, hold on, be careful and watch out. I don't know, maybe there are fewer females because doing business requires a lot of courage, and I don't know, you have to be risky. And maybe there are fewer females because we are less risky. I don't know. I don't want to believe in this. I want that to be just a stereotype. But I'd like to hear what you are thinking about this as a female entrepreneur. So thanks.
Thank you. I think this is a very long other discussion, but to answer it briefly, of course there are statistics that prove your point. But what we also see, especially in the entrepreneurial field, that more and more women are becoming role models, active role models, and there are more and more networks, the Geek Cats in Berlin that also are now in more cities, new editorial concepts that promote entrepreneurship by women. I personally don't really believe in the fact that we should talk about ourselves as women too much, but just, as we said previously, just do it. If I'm at a panel like this, I want to talk about the topics and the discussion and not my role as a woman. And I think the more women just do what they want to do, and it's a long journey from an old world, last century, to where we are now, the opportunities we have now, but I think it will happen organically and naturally, and it's just a matter of time until this discussion becomes obsolete.
And for that discussion, I would advise you to look at her homepage, and you will recognize that in her company only women are working, just one man, and he's a trainee. And he's a trainee. I like that. I like that very much. Thomas, it's yours.
Thank you. Just maybe coming back to the competitive element of data protection for the European single market. Just one funny short story I'd like to share and to tell why also EuroDIG and why a deeper dialogue between industry, civil society and policy arenas is necessary. Maybe you could remember the e-privacy directives, the so-called cookie law. The legal text was something like storing information on a computer's device is only allowed if users based on clear and transparent information giving his or her consent. So this means if you drop a cookie, you must get users' consent. What will happen then for those not being able in a position to get users' consent as users are not knowing them? So it's very easy to say, okay, I know the website, the publisher I'm visiting. I know Bild Zeitung or The Guardian or, and then maybe I trust because I know them. Or what can I do if I'd like to take a service, download an app or so, to get it, I must accept the data protection things or the privacy policy. And then what industry is doing. If it's very difficult to store cookies anymore, they're looking for alternative technologies. And the funny thing is the Commission tried to force the ideas of transparency, users control and choice, so saying, okay, if a cookie shall be dropped, users should have a choice in clear and transparent information. And then the alternative for industry is then using device fingerprinting, because device fingerprinting is not storing information on a computer device. So this is just making another route, and then it fails that users are not having transparent information because they even don't know that fingerprinting is ongoing. So this is a clear invitation also, I think, to us all, if we now, after the election of the European Parliament, going in a trilogue and further negotiation of a data protection regulation, that we might be more intelligent than the past regulation was. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any reaction from the panel, if you want to?
I think we've been talking a lot about privacy and data protection. We can also have some bilateral dialogues here. And because the key topic of this session is about economics, I want to say that I think what we see currently is, first, it's a wake-up call for Europe a little bit, and it also shows that the legislation process in Europe is definitely, slow. Sometimes it has also some advantages, but these data protection directive drafts and so on, it's taking years, and then it's completely overtaken by ongoing and new development and so on, which also means that the European institutions, including the Parliament and the Council and the Commission, we have to continue what we're doing so far, which is basically we have also to ask people who are very knowledgeable about what's going on, what they think about the proposals. Stakeholder dialogue in Brussels 20 years ago was you do something for the agriculture guys, and sometimes they come with the tractors to Brussels and smash some windows. But I think we have to change this approach a little bit nowadays. this. And when I say business opportunity, it's also an opportunity when you look at the negative figures that we have today. I'm also in charge of the digital gender scoreboard for Europe. Have a look, it's a very interesting document, of course. And some of the striking statistics there is that only 14% of European SMEs are using the internet to do promotion, to do sales. 14% of European SMEs. I think that's a shame. And it's partly also because we don't have it right in terms of data protection and privacy.
Thank you very much. We have another audience.
Yes, my name is Eberhard Blocher from Germany. I'm very thankful for this question on cookies because I've been very angry about this for about a year. I think about a year ago there was somebody in Brussels probably introduced a cookie directive, and since that time I've been seeing pop-ups on websites, do you agree to puppies? And I'm really angry because I think privacy is not about cookies. I think there's so many important issues in internet governance, and if we are talking about cookies, we're just wasting our time. And but the reason I'm standing here actually is the question which the lady in front asked some 10 minutes ago. I found it a very interesting question, and she said, we have all these American companies, we have Airbnb, we have Facebook, we have all these competitors basically, and they are threatening our European business model. And I don't think I've heard an answer to her question so far. The guy from Deutsche Telekom, you said that we need a level playing field. Now, with all due respect, this is rubbish. Because first of all, when I go and use a T-Mobile hotspot or a Telekom hotspot in Germany, you're blocking WhatsApp, for example. So I think that's a good idea of you to block WhatsApp and me not allowing me to use WhatsApp if I'm using a Telekom hotspot. But that's not a level playing field, that's just competition. I think that's right of you to do it. But so you're showing in your own company that there will never be a level playing field. And also I think we have all the American companies, and I think there will never be a level playing field, because you go to California, you ask Mark Zuckerberg to respect European privacy, and he will just laugh at you. So there's no way for us to compete as Europeans with the Americans on the level of privacy. And there has been some studies in Germany. There's an institute in Hamburg. They published a report a few months ago on users and on young people in Germany. And all of them are saying, we don't care about privacy. We're using Facebook, we're using WhatsApp. And also my own son, he's using WhatsApp, and he doesn't care if the NSA reads his messages to his friends. So, I mean, who cares? And if we're going down this road and just saying we need a level playing field, and we know it's never going to happen, I mean, we're going to lose the battle. The only answer for me is to drop privacy. Thank you.
Okay, just a direct answer to these issues. You can always take this position. We don't have any chance to compete. It is like it is. Yes, of course, competition is dynamic and is changing dynamically. But the question we have here, and that's I think a key part to debate, is really what are our European values? What is our European history? What is our European goal in this digital environment? And if you say, and this is implicitly your position, I don't care about European values, I take the American ones, that's sufficient, okay, that's your opinion. But from a European perspective, we have a tradition which is different to the American, and we have to take care of it, that we don't lose every roots we have in Europe. And that's a debate we have here, and that's the point what I raised in the issue of level playing field. And this is, as I said, not only an issue of data protection, or even only a very small part is data protection. It's against everything we have and how we build our business models, what kind of legal environment we want to have, what kind of user protection we want to have, and so on. And I don't go into the political debate which kind of protection level is right or wrong. That's a political discussion. The only thing I say, if politics decide to have a certain level of standards, of security, of data protection whatsoever, this has to be valid for everyone operating in the European market.
Thank you very much. Bertrand.
Yeah, good morning. Actually, I'm happy that the discussion moves back to privacy, because there was a question earlier on the Twitter wall, which was, can Europe compete via privacy in a certain way? I must confess that I'm speaking here purely as a European citizen, nothing to do with the activities I have or had before. I'm a little bit concerned that we're not necessarily framing the topic in the right way, and that we are potentially harming ourselves by the way we ask the questions. The protection of privacy, the protection of personal data is a very important thing, as has been said, in Europe, also for historic reasons. And speaking about France, one of the fundamental historic reasons is that there has been, during the war, deep misuse of data that had been collected for other reasons. This is the fundamental foundation of the reason why collection of data is so regulated in Europe. Point one. The second thing is that we all know that in the future, it's already the case, but in the future, it is the combination of data through big data analysis, but also through combination of databases and APIs and so on, that is going to create the most added value, both in social value and economic value. It is obvious as well that the more data you have, the more you can make combinations and potentially create value. So we have this tension between the two orientations. On the one hand, trying to collect as little as possible because it might be misused, and on the other hand, knowing that the value and the economic growth is going to come from as much data as possible and as much combination of data as possible to discover new ways to create value. If we begin to ask the problem this way, then the discussion on what Europe's position changes a little bit, because instead of having the current position, which I personally do not agree with, which is our data should not get out of Europe at any cost. We don't care about the data of the others, but we should have the minimum connection and the minimum data going out. Couldn't we frame the debate in terms of what is the policy that will make European data regulation so balanced that everybody in the world will want to bring its data not under European soil, but under a European-like rule. But in order to do this, it cannot be based on the minimization of collection. This is not possible. It's just like saying oil is the resource for the future, but the key to competition is to have as little oil as possible. This is not true. We need to regulate misuse of data, not the collection of data.
Thank you, Citizen Bertrand de la Chapelle. And I totally agree that, well, the collection of data, of course, is not the problem, but the misuse, and we have to regulate that. And as you mentioned, the Schengen net is not the solution. Another last voice from the audience, I think. Go ahead.
I'm honored to be last. Martin Levy from Cloudflare. God, I just got annoyed when I stood up here because I've spent an awful lot of my time trying to build a better, faster, bigger internet. Let me rewind. I hold a British passport. I hold an American passport. So part of the discussion about a European versus an American, oh sorry, and I live in Silicon Valley, just to add insult to this conversation. The internet is global, and I'm going to put a full stop at the end of that statement. The phrase, when you talk about Schengen internet, as that has come up in the last year, delete it in any possible way you can, because I think it's, if I put my European side on, it's an embarrassment to discuss that in any shape, manner, or form compared to the openness that countries, Western countries, that most countries, quite frankly, have. So think about entrepreneurship, going back to a key point of the conversation. Think about using the internet. Think about it only in a global sense. Bertrand talked about privacy and actually just came up with a brilliant conversation about the difference. But I want to just close this comment by saying, trying to build infrastructure to make the internet better, to make it more usable, and yet having to deal with, quite frankly, per country or per region rules that are just cause problems. They absolutely cause problems when trying to be delivering services. Will stifle and stop the type of things that the internet has the capability of being. So I just implore you guys to think about this. This goes well beyond any of the conversation that is discussed here. Think about it from the future, think about the inevitable, think about the build, and think about changing this and removing any concept of country or region boundary in any way. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Oliver, go ahead,
Yes.
but be fast.
Yes, very short, fast comment. The topic of this panel normally means how IT can foster growth, and I'm sitting here, we are always talking again about regulation and data privacy and so on. I just want to mention, or I want to give a comment. I think we oversleep in Europe. We oversleep the first digital revolution with search engines, with social networks. We just oversleep. But now there comes the second digital revolution. And the second digital revolution goes into the business processes. And this is the core of our business here in Europe. And I think we must do anything against this. And that's what I was awaiting from this plenary. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. And I totally agree that, of course, every panel I'm on for the last couple of years, dealing with internet, business, small, medium-sized enterprises, we've been always talking about the dark side of the internet and not about the chances we have. But I think you've proven that there are more chances than there are threats on the internet, and we should take these chances and go out and tell everyone, hey, go out and just do it. But last round here on the plenary, everyone has one sentence, 140 characters to say.
Yeah, just very shortly, my point of view is less regulation, more education to turn users, companies and entrepreneurs into equal players compared to American or Asian players.
The internet is definitely global, and we don't need restrictions on a local basis. But I think the key point, and this is what EuroDIG, ICANN, and all the international associations are doing, is a dialogue on finding a global governance which is taking care of all the issues put on the table here. And the last point regarding ICT policies and the environment, indeed, we haven't discussed this deeply. I made 4 proposals, unfortunately no response on these issues, but I think we do have proposals on the table what can be done on the political level.
Yes, I think that when we talk about young entrepreneurship, because I think that's the main reason I'm here, I just hope we can get more attention for it at schools. I really agree with what you said. Not everyone has to be an entrepreneur, it's not for everyone, but I do think that we should all know it's an option and that we should make our own decision, knowing that entrepreneurship is one of our options and it's an option for everyone if you have the motivation. And about privacy, I really agree with, I think, Mr. De La Chapelle. It's really nice to have the Twitter wall to see his name. Really agree that we shouldn't just, when it's about regulation and privacy, I think privacy is very important, but we shouldn't just stop collecting data because of that. I don't think that there has to be a fight between collecting amounts of data and privacy. I think it's more about how you do it, who gets the data, and who is in charge of what happens to that data. What's important to make sure that our privacy is safeguarded. So I hope we can find a way to make the user in control of his own data, so he can decide who gets the data for what period of time and what to do with it. So his privacy is safe, but we can also use it to make lives better, so to say.
Yeah, I have 2 takes. One is to be competitive with other global markets in Asia or the Americas. Europe needs to be really a union with all the countries having the same currency, same legal basis, and free movement of people and capital in Europe, in all angles of Europe. Otherwise, it doesn't work. With the system we have now, it doesn't really work. And the other take is just simple. privacy and security have become important to do for all CEOs and entrepreneurs. It should be written in their mindsets. That has changed over the last time, and with Snowden especially.
A little wake-up call, and it might sound a bit pathetic, but I think we have great assets here in Europe. I think we're just under-exploiting them, really. I think we have great talent. I think we have relatively good education systems. Let's just make them even more modern, and let's change the curricula. I think that's what we need to do. Let's speed up things in terms of regulation and in working together. Let's tear down the barriers, and let's reboot Europe.
So, thank you very much, all of you, for 1.5 hours of interesting discussion. There will be more. We're gonna have some breakout sessions after half an hour break here in this room, as I understood. We have planned, right at the moment, maybe you can show them on the beamer, planned 3 breakout sessions. One is moderated by you, Dirk, another one by you, Thomas. So these groups will meet in this room and the corners, sit together and discuss more in deep the issues we've been just passing by this the last discussion. And I'll hand over the microphone to Wolf. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jimmy. As Jimmy just announced, first a hand for Jimmy and his panelists. But as Jimmy said, it's not yet over. You will have an opportunity after the coffee break outside now, and half an hour to come back and to continue with breakout sessions on plenary 4 follow-up. In parallel of the breakout sessions, there will be the other track of the workshops. And the workshops will take place in the same rooms over there, like we had the first 4 yesterday. We will today continue after the coffee break with workshop 5 to 8. So please, I think all of you know the priority, either the breakout sessions, the workshops you would like to see. Try to be in time there after the coffee break. Thanks a lot.